Hi, this is Phil Nevin with the San Francisco Giants. You're listening to Out of Left Field with the Grilling Truth.
Hey guys, Graham and Chris back here with you. It is a glorious Monday evening for Chris and I because it is day number 2 of Major League Baseball opening day. And that wasn't an I'm Ron Burgundy moment, but it's just we had 3 games on Sunday that was opening day, but now today's being touted as opening day. So I feel like we're kind of having a Groundhog Day of baseball. But either way, the 2017 Major League Baseball season has been put in play, just as this show is being put in play. And our resident wrong guy, which would be Chris Furry, had a chance to go all the way to Chase Field and watch the Arizona Diamondbacks take on his beloved San Francisco Giants. And while we will get to the finale of that game in a little bit, Chris, I'm still kind of angry at you because you got to enjoy opening day at the park, and I got to enjoy it on the couch.
Yeah, opening day at the park is sort of a unique experience. You know, we did the whole 9 yards at Chase Field. We had a flyover. We had the huge flag on the field. You know, all the opening day stuff. A bunch of ceremonies and whatnot before the game. It was a lot of fun. I mean, I haven't been to an opening game in quite a few years. The last one I went to was at AT&T Park in San Francisco, I think in 2005. So more than a decade it's been since I've been to an opening
that's
day.
Before you and I were even in the Army together.
Yeah. So it's been more than a decade since I've even been to an opening day. So it was a great experience. I had a lot of fun. You know, as much fun as you can have when your team that on paper should have won handily loses.
Yeah. So like I said, we'll get to that in just a second because if any of you guys, any of you fans of the show, appreciate the ripping and ribbing that we give Chris for being a Giants fan, especially when they do what they did the other day. If you've been looking forward to the show, hey, it's okay. I've got your back. So have I. And it was even happening during the show, although that game had way more beyond just what ended up being the final score. But as we get back into it, you know, you think of opening day, it's all right, you know, everything's back to normal. The hot dogs are going, everything, you know, the grass is green, everything smells good, everything sounds good, until you realize that it doesn't take very long before injuries start to happen. And this is not going to be a woe is me injury day, but there are a few notable injuries that happened within the first really 24, 36 hours or so of the opening, of opening day. And the first one's going to be, at least during a game, is Junior Guerra, who was the Milwaukee Brewers opening day starter. He ended up straining his right calf running the bases. Will be on the DL. Now, the nice thing for the Brewers is with these Major League Baseball rule changes, they have a 10-day DL stint now instead of the full 15. So it shouldn't require much. Plus, the nice thing of being a pitcher is you get a 10-day DL stint, which probably means 1 start, maybe 2. He's not going to need to do anything with that leg really to, aside from let it rehab, let that strain go away, and should be good. Craig Counsell doesn't appear to be too concerned, should be very minimal time away. But Garrett did use crutches after undergoing the testing, which is to be expected because a strain still – I'm not going to want to put a whole lot of weight on a strained calf either. And a guy who just finished pushing off the mound for however many pitches he managed to get, it's probably one of those I'm going to just let it heal and relax.
Yeah, and you could probably expect him to miss his next start, but I assume he'll be back for the start after that. It's not his push-off leg. It's his landing leg, so I'm sure that he's probably all right. But in my opinion, this sort of injury to a pitcher really speaks to a problem that I have with baseball overall, and that's that pitchers don't really get worked out in much the same way that fielders do. And this is the kind of thing that you see happen to guys who don't stretch with the team, who don't do the same things with the team, because pitchers have their own warm-up. They have their own pregame sort of ritual that they go through, and a lot of that doesn't include the sort of static stretching or even in-motion stretching that the fielders are going to get.
And to be fair, and the point you're making, and this kind of really sums it up, is they don't do as. And I'm not at all trying to minimize what a pitcher does. That's not at all what I'm saying here. But big picture, they also don't do as much as often as an everyday fielder. So while all those guys are all maybe you get your running in, but while guys are always running the bases, they're moving, they're jerking from side to side, they're making those fast twitch muscles work. The main thing that he's doing is using those big upper part of the leg to really drive forward and throw a ball downhill. He's not focused as much on that get out of the box quick, try and beat out a bunt, whatever it may be, and something like that. It is going to make you a little bit concerned. The bigger issue with this, especially being the proximity to spring training. Obviously, we're 2 days out of spring training. Is that everything isn't totally warm. We know that spring training is designed to kind of get the edges nice and round, but you're still getting everything back and getting everything oiled. You want to get into that natural momentum, that routine. And if this throws him off, there's also a possibility, depending on how well he can maintain his arm strength, he may need a rehab stint, albeit a short rehab stint, but it could become an issue. I don't think it's going to be anything long term it's going to hamper him. And let's be honest, at the end of the day, it's not going to change the Brewers' season outcome. I don't think any of us really expect the Brewers to make a postseason run, so there's no reason to push him back when, make sure he stays healthy. You know he's going to be part of your future. Save him for that long-term future purpose.
Right. And speaking of injuries that probably aren't going to be a big deal, Noah Syndergaard did come out of the game early today. If you're a Mets fan, you're probably worried seeing Noah, who was having a really good game up to that point, come out. Probably makes you worry a little bit. He has a blister on his right thumb. Blisters are commonplace for pitchers. There's a lot of friction between the hand and the ball, and so Noah Syndergaard came out early for that right thumb blister. I don't expect Noah to miss a start behind this blister. If he does, I might start worrying, because a blister is one thing, but if you miss a start because of a blister, that means something's wrong, because a blister should heal enough that you can pitch a game within 5 days. If this becomes a chronic problem with him, then you can start worrying. And we do have, there are pitchers.
Rich Hill comes to mind.
Rich
the first
Hill,
guy I can think of
right,
last year. Yeah.
Right. Who have chronic problems with finger blisters, and they can be bad.
Yeah.
And it's painful.
And to be honest, I think from everything that I saw, and obviously having to work today, I didn't get the chance to too closely watch today's games. Obviously tonight I'll be watching closely, but to me, really that, and you wouldn't think it, but Braves Mets, and the Braves had the Mets number a decent amount last year, but that was probably the most well-pitched game between the starters that we've seen so far on this opening weekend. Tehran. No, but Tehran and Syndergaard both go 6 full. Neither allows a run. 5 strikeouts and 6 strikeouts respectively, Tehran to Syndergaard, and Tehran had 3 walks, but both pitched well. On that big of a stage in Citi Field, as a Braves, you've got to be happy to see Tehran coming in. He pitched relatively well in the World Baseball Classic, comes out, opens up again, looks good. If I'm a Braves fan, which I grew up one, I'm liking to see this from Julio Tehran, especially because he was on the trading block discussion last year. They held on to him. I think that's a very smart move. You've got pieces around that club now and we'll get to this later on in the season, but they've got pieces to push them forward, as John Smoltz and Tom Glavine, both former Braves pitchers and both Hall of Famers in Cooperstown, New York, have told me, while it may not be this year, in 18 or 19, look for the Braves to start making some pretty good-sized ripples and noise in that National League East. Now, one of the things, that you and I think both enjoyed watching the WBC. There were things good and bad that happened that we didn't like. But one of the worries, and we asked this in I think a show 2 weeks ago, was is it worth it? Are the injury possibilities worth it? Right. And the thing that gets me regardless of how deep into spring training you get, those guys are going to play harder than they're going to play in spring training, which I'm sure is nice for the guys who are there because they a long grind that is a month of spring training, which is, it's kind of laughable when you think of a 9-month season where these guys are playing sometimes 14, 15, 19 straight days. But spring training is kind of arduous because it's just the same thing over and over. You want to get to the games that mean something. But Drew Smyly, a left-hander for the Mariners, pitched very well for the U.S. In the WBC. Didn't pitch well last year for the Rays, but, really looked, utterly dominant for Team USA. Now has been diagnosed with a flexor strain late last week at the tail end of spring training. He's going to miss the first 6 to 8 weeks of the regular season, which is a huge blow to a Mariners team that, if I remember correctly, you think really has a great option at that wild card run coming in towards October in the American League.
Yeah, and I think they still will. Drew Smyly is going to be a loss, obviously. If he's going to be gone 6 to 8 weeks, that's going to mean rehab time. So the Tacoma Rainiers are probably going to benefit from Drew Smyly for a couple of games here in the next 6 or 8 weeks.
Shout out to the Rainiers.
Yeah, but expect them to expect the Mariners to get him back and raring to go. The thing I think that's the worst about that is that if Smiley's gone for 6 to 8 weeks, you're talking now maybe 8 starts, maybe 10 starts that he's going to miss. And 10 games is a big deal when you're talking about the wild card coming down to a single game, half a game.
And that's a third of a season for a pitcher. A starter more often than not, where you're getting maybe 30 games. You're looking at 33% of your entire season gone because of this.
Right.
Plus, like you said last year with Kershaw, and you just mentioned now, then he's got to try and get back into the groove again. Right. And that's got to be disheartening after the way he dominated in the World Baseball Classic to now feel like he's back to square one, and now he's got to make steps to try and get back to that, and it makes you wonder, you got to hope he stays out of his head, but that's a hard thing to not kind of start thinking, man, what if?
Right, and so I'm hopeful that Drew Smyly is going to come back ready to pitch, but I'm also hopeful that whoever the Mariners can bring to put into that slot in the rotation can at least win, 50% of the games he's asked to pitch. That's the only thing, in my opinion. If Smiley's out for 10 or 11 starts, then you have to hope that his replacement's going to win 5 or 6 games. It's the only way they're going to stay in contention, in my opinion.
Right, and I think today will show us where Felix Hernandez is getting, I believe, the 9th straight opening day call on the bump, which is the most for any active pitcher. Really seeing what he can do is going to be a telling piece of what the Mariners do. When Felix is probably going to be he's still your number one piece, obviously by name. By stuff, you and I have discussed that, and I'm sure we'll discuss it more throughout the year. Right. Now, to your point, Ariel Miranda, a lefty, is who will be replacing Drew Smyly. Last year went 5-2 with a 3.88 ERA in 12 games. Started 10 of those. He walked 18 and struck out 44. So not horrible, but it's a very small sample size. But again, it's in 10 games started, which is about what is a possibility that he will be called upon to do. So can't say definitively what's going to happen. It's obviously way too early to say anything. That would just be premature and foolish, but it's a good thing for the Mariners. Now, moving on to a little bit more happy news, and we put this out there on Facebook this week. The St. Louis Cardinals have reached an extension with catcher Yadier Molina. It was signed Sunday before their primetime game against the World Series champs. He is making $60 million, $20 million each season, no deferred money. And the big question, and Chris, you and I talked about it, and this was the way you kind of pitched it, which I thought was perfect, is this the kind of, is this the Kobe deal in Major League Baseball? Is this kind of a, hey, thanks for everything, here's a ton of money for a couple more years, and then at that point, man, it is time to go? Or is it still a smart move by a team who is signing a field general who, by all accounts, is still probably one of the top 3 catchers in all of Major League Baseball, at least top 5, especially for his age. He's the best catcher of his age. I'd still say top 5 catchers in the entire game.
Rated in the top 5, absolutely. In fact, only knocked out of the number 1 slot by Buster Posey in the last year. Yadier Molina is a phenomenal catcher. And I think anybody who would argue that point doesn't watch baseball. In my opinion, I fall on both sides of the fence in this question. Is this the Kobe deal? Not exactly, but kinda. Is Yadier Molina worth $20 million a year? Yeah, he is. He's 34 years old. They signed him for 3 more years. He's gonna be 37 when he gets done with this contract. Probably a good retirement age for him. And you look at what this guy's done behind the dish for the last, his whole career. I mean, he's been the sort of catcher that coaches have dreams about. Coaches go to sleep in the off season dreaming about the next Yadier Molina being on their team because he's that good. And he still leads the league in throwing runners out at second base. I mean, he's still tops. I'm sorry. Is he going to be that way 2 years from now?
Which is going to be, as you like to say, past performance doesn't predict, future performance. So,
right. So who knows? But I can tell you this much: he's worth the $20 million he's getting this year, as anyone who watched the World Baseball Classic can tell you, as anyone who watched his performance last night against the Cubs can tell you. He went 2 for 3. He was walked. He drew a walk, and drew the first intentional walk of the new era, where he sort of smiled at the umpire, handed his bat and his elbow guard off to the bat boy, and trotted down to first base with no pitches being thrown. I didn't like it. It hurt me. But he was the first person to draw a new intentional walk. And his performance last night was incredible, with the same fire that he played with in the World Baseball Classic.
Definitely. And we love that you guys always comment. We get your feedback. Love it. You can always find us on Facebook, Out of Left Field, hosted by Chris and Graham. Also at OO Left Field on Twitter. We got a couple of nice comments. Casey Gagnon, I want to say it's Gagnon, Gagnon. Sorry if I said it wrong, Casey. I am not the pronunciation guy. I'll say Gagnon. But he said, Yachty is still the best backstop in the game, and the leadership he brings to his team is second to none. Jeff Martin followed up saying, I think both. And that's, again, in our response to, is this a loyalty thing or actually a smart signing? That I think both. Loyalty, and he can get it done. He's like having another manager on the field, too. Jeff, I agree completely. I think it is a bit of, like you said, Chris, a bit of both, loyalty, but he is. I mean, you see him go out there, the way that he positions guys. You don't argue with Yadier Molina. And we could see, I mean, it was on no better display than in that game last night, where we saw the difference in how Wilson Contreras is trying to learn how to work with John Lester. And Yadi's just like, yeah, I'm me, so just follow my lead.
Yeah, and in the grand scheme of things, you're talking about a guy who won 8 straight Gold Gloves at the catcher position. He didn't win it last year. Posey took the honors. But I think we're looking at a guy who, at 34 years old, is a contender for a Gold Glove still this year, next year, and probably in his final year. I don't think that just looking at him behind the plate, and you've said this several times offline with me, that just watching him behind the plate and the flexibility and the ability to get in and out of that crouch that he still possesses at 34 years old, which is rare for a catcher, is pretty incredible to watch. Painful to watch sometimes.
Yeah, and I mean, again, I don't agree with Casey's take as far as him being the best backstop in the league. His ability to control the game and control his defense is among the top. I still think Buster Posey, grand scheme, as far as everything that he does, is probably the best backstop, and Salvador Perez is right there next to him. A couple more guys said this, and I like this. I was surprised because Tommy Thompson on one of our pages said that he thinks that the Cardinals look at him as their franchise player. They lost Pujols and don't want to make the same mistake. I don't think it's really the same. I mean, he is their franchise player. I don't think it'd be a mistake. The Cardinals didn't make a mistake to get rid of Pujols. We see what happened in L.A., and it's been brilliant. Don Cooper said, and this one I was a little probably the most negative out of all of them, which is we like seeing both sides. Don said, St. Louis fan, but Yachty for another 3? Not a fan of the rally killer. If you love 6-4-3 double play balls when you need a key hit, then Yachty is your guy. Decline is the word for the next 3. So obviously a much different take, and James Abbott said the same thing. The offense is the question. He's a huge asset to the young arms rotation as they move on from Waino. But again, that's the big thing is he is not known for his bat, but I mean what he can do with a glove is still pretty much second to very, 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 very few.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. The other thing that I think that we wanted to talk about today was opening day. I don't know if did we want to discuss that on today's show? Was that?
I mean, it's in the news. It kind of happened.
It's sort of a big deal.
Yeah, I mean, the Giants lost, but Madison Bumgarner, just did Madison Bumgarner things, and I gave you the funny tidbit off air, which I mean had you pretty much rolling over in your chair.
Right. So let's talk about Madison Bumgarner for a minute. I was lucky enough, which I think everyone who ever goes to a baseball game hopes that they see something historic. I think that's, in addition to watching your team win, I think everybody goes with that mindset of, man, what if I see a no-hitter? Man, what if I see a perfect game? Man, what if I see this? What if I see that? What if somebody finally hits 5 home runs in a single game for the first time in history? Those are the sort of things that we go hoping, hey, maybe something historic's going to happen. I'm going to be there to witness it. Or is that just me? I don't know if you do the same thing.
The first one, I heard wait, did he just? Oh snap! He just hit Greinke. Okay, and then and I had dinner coming in. I'd ordered a pizza. I'm gonna get some pizza, drink some beer. I'm gonna do the guys' night thing. I was alone at the house. I'm just gonna do my thing. And oh damn, he just hit another one.
Yeah.
Wow, Madison Bumgarner is the Major League Baseball home run leader. That was my first thought.
Right. Not only is he the Major League Baseball home run leader, he also has a perfect batting average at this point. He was 2 for 2 with 2 home runs. He has a perfect batting average and a perfect slugging percentage. And I think he's the only person in baseball. I think he's the only person in baseball who does. He is batting 1,000. His on-base percentage is 1,000. He's slugging 400, and his OPS is 5.
And let's not forget also, that he is, and you said this, and again, it always, every single time it just kind of, it slips my mind that George Herman Ruth started out his Major League career not stuffing his face with hot dogs, but standing on a hill and throwing. He was a pitcher.
He was still stuffing his face with hot dogs.
I was trying to be polite, and you want to step on the Hall of Famer's grave. But either way, he was a pitcher, and Madison Bumgarner is as of yesterday, is the only pitcher in the history of Major League Baseball to have 2 home runs on opening day. The only pitcher to have 2 homers on opening day.
And to sort of put that into perspective, and to sort of give a reason why the Babe didn't didn't accomplish that feat is by the end of the dead ball era, the Babe wasn't really pitching anymore. So his big pitching years were 1918, 1919, 1917, especially that 1917 World Series. And he wasn't just a pitcher. I mean, he wasn't just a guy who stood on the hill and pitched. Remember all those records that Madison Bumgarner was brushing up against in the World Series, in the last couple World Series? Those are Babe Ruth's records. Babe Ruth set those lowest ERA, most innings pitched in a World Series records that Madison Bumgarner was brushing against. So he wasn't just a pitcher. He was a great pitcher. And
so I'm going to ask you, what's the over-under on total dingers for Mad Bum this year?
I'm going 5.
You think 5?
5 home runs. So he has the most of any active pitcher in Major League Baseball right now with 16 in his career. I'm going 5 this year. I think he gets to 21, and I think he gets another invite to the Home Run Derby that Manfred's going to force him to turn down.
I'm going to go 6. 2 in one game. Obviously, guys are going to be what's going to happen eventually is we're going to see Madison Bumgarner get intentionally walked, which is just going to be funny. That's just going to be laughable, But I'm going to go 6, just one above you. This is, we'll go the over-under here. So we'll say 5.5. You're taking the under. I'm taking the over. But when you start out the season with 2 and you still got about 29 or so more games to go, I think he could get over. He could get over halfway to 10.
If Madison Bumgarner gets intentionally walked at a game that I attend, I'm going to stand up and slow clap him down the first baseline.
That's epic. That's thank you for
and where
proving...
I sit in Chase Field. No, I'm going to slow clap the pitcher who just intentionally walked a pitcher. That's what the slow clap is for. And based on where I sit in Chase Field, where my tickets are, there's about 100 Giants fans around me. I think I can convince them all to do it.
No, out of the 2 big arms in the West, this is really one of those things where a tale of two games. The Dodgers, the Dodgers opened it up against the Padres again. And the game was, let's call it an improvement from last year. Okay. Sure. Last year was 15-0. This year was 14-3. Same outcome. Dodgers won, but hey, the Padres put 3 on the board and were able to hold one off.
Right.
Exactly. See, it's an improvement. It's like saying if the Cubbies win a World Series in the next 108 years or 107 years, they've improved. So The big difference here is Madison Bumgarner gives up 3 earned runs. He was solid. He had 1 inning of just and then got back on track. 11 strikeouts, that long, lanky figure, that huge arm coming around. He pounds his own. There is nobody that no one throws the way that he does. He reminds me a lot of Randy Johnson, the way RJ used to pitch. Because Johnson was like 6'10". Even though that met him 6'5", he looks so much taller on the mound. His wingspan is so long that arm just comes across with this wicked whip action. Now Kershaw on the flip side, they both went 7 full innings. Kershaw gave up 2 runs. 1 of them was earned on only 2 hits. He struck out 8, but also gave up a home run. So a pretty good size discrepancy at the moment in ERA, a 1.29 for Kershaw and a 3.86 for Bumgarner. If this is the way it's going to be this year, God, I cannot wait to watch these 2 teams go up against each other.
Especially with those 2 guys on the hill.
Yes, sir.
That is going to be a game to watch. In my opinion, that's going to be one of the great games that we see out of the West this season, is going to be when those 2 guys play each other. And I hope it's going to happen twice. I think I haven't looked exactly at the schedule, but if everything goes according to the plan, I think they see each other twice. And those are going to be great games, in my opinion. Now, the issue is, and I agree with you, Madison Bumgarner does throw like Randy Johnson. He's got that huge, long arm. He makes it look a little bit more effortless than Randy Johnson did. He looks like he's up there playing catch.
Yeah.
But at the same time, the very small downside to Madison Bumgarner is that 93-mile-an-hour fastball. If that was 95 or 96, he would probably be unhittable because his cutter is so strong at 90 miles an hour. That slider's real strong, and he's got a really, really great curveball. If that fastball was a little bit faster, he'd probably be an unhittable pitcher. But 6 innings into the game last night, you saw him get tired. You saw him get frustrated. That's his other downside. His attitude and his ability to get spun out of a game quick is his other downside. If you watched him hit that second home run, every single ounce of strength and every single bit of contact was pure, unadulterated hate.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is he – sometimes he wants guys to get in his head because he wants to channel that. The problem is if you fail to channel that, and you can't be perfect, you're going to get yourself hurt. He reminds me in a way, I don't mean this at all in a pejorative way, but he reminds me of Michael Vick in a way that I say that Vick was a guy who on the run could just flick his wrist, and then 60 yards later, the ball came down. And it's like, how in the world did you make no effort and throw it that far? And that's the way that Mad Bum makes it seem. With Kershaw, there's a lot of moving parts. He's almost like he's falling forward off the mound. It was a big reason of why the back issue had us so concerned last year. Now, like I said, either way, this is going to be just an absolutely beautiful, just a beautiful season for both teams.
Right.
The one thing that I want to get to before
don't forget that Bumgarner took a perfect game 5 innings yesterday.
Exactly, and you made mention of this, and I'll go ahead and I'll let you take the Kershaw side of it.
I almost slapped the guy behind me for using the P word at the end of the 5th inning, because he looked up at the scoreboard where it said no runs, no hits, no errors, no walks, and he went, oh, he's perfect through 5, and I almost turned around and slapped him. It was real close.
See, that's why violence doesn't solve things, Chris. It just doesn't.
No,
you know what?
But
I will tell you what irony.
When he jinxes
but I will
a
tell you
perfect
what
game.
irony is. But I will go ahead and lay some irony for you. Clayton Kershaw, 3-time National League Cy Young Award winner, one of the best pitchers in the league. Yes,
absolutely.
Makes $33 million this season, worth every single penny.
Undoubtedly.
The Padres have committed to pay 25 players $28 million. So the winning pitcher of today's opening game between the Dodgers and the Padres was won by a man who makes more money than the entire Padres roster. Tanking party of 25. Tanking party of 25. We will seat you now.
Yes. And I don't know if this is tank for a new stadium or tank for the first overall pick, which doesn't really make any sense in baseball, or what this is about, but paying your entire roster just what evens out to just over $1 million a guy doesn't make any sense if you're trying to win. So this is an obvious attempt to not win ball games, in my opinion. I don't know why. Maybe the Padres want to move.
If I'm Andy Green, I'm like, this is my first managerial job. My second season of my first managerial job is this. Yay! You got to be salivating for that one.
I mean, do you think the Padres want to move? You think that's what's going on here? Do they want to get out of San Diego and
I mean, I hope
forego
the
tens of millions of dollars that they just put into? But didn't they just put tens of millions of dollars into Petco Park?
I believe so.
Into upgrading? So I don't think
so.
It's that, but the city doesn't give them a whole lot of support. They don't do this whole sellout crowd thing. So maybe that is what it is. Maybe it's tank to get a new place to play. But
why don't you just tank to get new players to play with? I mean,
right.
But they're a team that's going to be young. I talked to you about off air, and I watched the game. They had a kid who had not pitched higher than A ball, pitch an inning and a third, and pitch well. went through the heart of the Dodgers lineup, struck out one, no hits, was perfect through an inning in the third. So, I mean, high five to him. And there's a big difference here between a team like the Padres and a team like the Yankees, who are still trying to get younger but have a definitely an aging pitching staff. And the opening game of the year was actually in my backyard in Tampa, and it was the New York Yankees against their divisional rival, the Tampa Bay Rays. Now, your face is scaring me. I'm not sure what that is, but it's kind of odd.
I'm sorry. I just saw something that I think might be the most fitting thing I've ever seen.
Okay.
And I'm sorry that this is completely off topic. I apologize for the interruption.
So we're off the rails here. You just stopped. You picked up the tracks, derailed the train.
But I saw something that immediately struck me as the most appropriate thing I've ever seen. Do you know where Madison Bumgarner was born?
What I see online is Hickory, North Carolina.
Hickory, North Carolina. Is that not the most appropriate thing you've ever heard? Hickory.
I mean, if it was maple or ash, maybe I think you're having a bit of a romance moment here.
Think about the kind of person that Madison Bumgarner is. Take the OROI off the city that he was born in.
I didn't say the word. That's kind of rough. Like I said,
I'm not going to say it either. But he wrestles steers in the off season. I'm just saying.
Well, like I told you, and for those of you who want, if you want to give us some grief, give Chris some grief at OO Left Field on Twitter, Out of Left Field hosted by Chris and Graham on Facebook, and the Out of Left Field baseball community page on Facebook as well. Of course, email us ooleftfield@gmail.com. I was mentioning this just because I found it kind of funny, and it was, like I said, it was probably one of the just off the top best visuals I came up with. But I picture Madison Bumgarner and Clayton Kershaw kind of like what happened in Avengers: Age of Ultron, where Mad Bum was like Steve Rogers, just ripping apart big pieces of lumber to make firewood, and then Clayton Kershaw is there, and he has to go up to the barn for a second, and he looks at Mad Bum and says, "Don't touch my pile," and he's got like 3 little twigs, and Bumgarner just keeps on pulling apart big pieces of wood with his hands. It's like, yeah. That's just kind of how I picture that conversation going. But as I have, while we're on superhero topics, we have put the rails back together and back to the Yankees and the Rays. Masahiro Tanaka had an absolutely horrific start. 7 earned runs in 2 2/3 innings. In a translation of a tweet, Tanaka said, "I really could not do anything today. It is miserable. I looked back on the video, but it is too cruel. However, as I understood the problem with some kind of image, I managed to correct it somehow and hope to see the next one." He doesn't go into much explanation. The tweet sounds like it's a mechanical thing. But, I mean, he was getting absolutely smacked around Tropicana Field. And the Trop looked good. It had brand new turf. Everything was bright. But, I mean, I don't know what in the world happened. But, oh, my gosh, man. I mean, it was – as a guy who grew up, being, knowing to never like the Yankees, and my dad still is that way, it was sweet, sweet justice and vengeance. But as someone to just look at baseball as a whole, and Mark Teixeira said this on Baseball Tonight, really before the game began, is, as a hitter, if you have a bad opening day, no big deal. It is what it is. It happens. But seeing a pitcher struggle or have velocity issues on a consistent basis during his opening start, it makes you worry. And I hope this is only a mechanical thing, because I think that the Yankees can play spoiler in the American League East this year to somebody. And that's going to be their role. And if they manage to make a wild card spot, then, I mean, Joe Girardi, it just goes to show how good he is, and that could garner him Manager of the Years in the American League East. I mean, or in the American. I mean, it could. I'm not saying it will, but if that all transpired, I could see it happening. But I hope for their sake and Tanaka's sake that, obviously he came over to this country so late in his career because of the the way the CBA goes and working with Japanese teams and that. But I mean, man, that was just straight up painful to watch.
Yeah, and he was off and you could just see that he was off. And it's hard to watch a guy like Tanaka be off because he's not off by much. It's just that when he is off, it's just by those few inches. He's missing those spots, and he's putting the ball, he's grooving it in right down the middle, and he's getting hurt. Now, there were times when he was really off. There was times when
his
he was
location
really off.
Awful. Middle of the plate and up. And and to go back and slow it down and watch Gary Sanchez's glove with all that movement, just sitting there as an umpire, I'm like, oh my gosh. It's
doesn't matter how good you can frame
inside
pitching.
of the knees, outside at the belt. You're looking at a foot of movement laterally almost in the meatball zone.
Right. And to watch him be off like that is painful. It's painful for me, and I'm not even a fan of the Yankees. I'm the direct polar opposite of a fan of the Yankees. So, but even watching him get bat around like that by a team who I think we can all agree is not going to compete in Major League Baseball for some time is painful to watch. And it's fun to watch Evan Longoria hit home runs. That's what Evan Longoria is good at. But if Tanaka wouldn't have missed on that pitch, he might have had a hard drive into left field, but it wouldn't have sneaked over the wall like that. That was just a little bit of a location mistake that allowed him to get enough of that ball to get it out.
And deja vu all the way back to, I believe it was 2011, with the inception of the second wild card, when against the Yankees, Longoria puts that over the wall and sent the Rays to the postseason. Tanaka's outing tied for the shortest opening day start by a Yankee dating back to 1913.
And if he doesn't bring it together,
it's
it's going to be his last opening day start.
Yeah, and Larry Rothschild, who has been the longtime pitching coach for the Yankees, said it's hard to tell why he was off, but I think he didn't command anything. It starts with the fastball. He was just out of whack. It wasn't noticeable delivery-wise, but he pulled some balls and overthrew a few pitches and just couldn't find a rhythm. So, I believe, and if I heard this right, and I may be off just a little bit, but from what I recall, I think he gave up one run, maybe less, in all of his first innings of his starts last year. He gave up, I believe, 3 runs in the first inning on opening day. It was just one of those games, and that's what I hope it comes out to be, is just one of those games. Now, we've got one more game we're going to talk about. That's going to be the Cubbies and the Cardinals, and some concerns really that I have. But before we get there, the NHL, and everyone's going, why in the hell are you guys talking about hockey? This is going to play a little bit more into baseball in the next probably next year or in the next 2.5 years. The NHL announced that it would not be sending its players to the Olympics in South Korea next year. Normally, as we've seen in the last few years, the league actually would stop their season basically mid-season to allow all their players to go play for their respective countries and kind of help grow the game on an international side of broadcasting in the Olympics. What the NHL appears to have wanted was they wanted some kind of conciliatory offers from the IOC, basically to placate owners, because the owners didn't want to shut down for a month. So it's the owners obviously don't care. Players are not happy. Notably, Henrik Lundqvist, the goalie of the Rangers, said disappointing news. Part of the Olympics, a huge opportunity to market the game at the biggest stage is wasted. So why do we bring this up? Well, it makes you wonder now. The World Baseball Classic happened during spring training. So Major League players, granted, as we said with Drew Smyly, they play harder and the games mean something, but it's still during spring training when they would be playing. The Olympics are going to be mid-season. So it made me wonder, Chris, the whole idea of bringing baseball back is great. And maybe this is one of those things where, at the end of the day, maybe you're getting back to what the Olympics was supposed to be, which is a worldwide sporting event for amateurs, amateur athletes. Yes, you have professionals in archery and whatnot, but grand scheme, they're not professional athletes, right? And I don't mean that in any rude or derogatory sense, but
in that they don't get paid for they don't get paid for athletic competition.
Right. I mean, they're not basing their career on rowing and archery and curling and fencing. They devote their life to it, but it's not going to be their career. Whereas baseball, hockey, basketball, that kind of thing. So it makes you wonder, what kind of precedent does this set for baseball? What will it set for basketball? Because basketball happens in the off season, but I mean, that's a lot of wear and tear those guys take, plus the travel. So do we see a precedent for I think we both agree that there was no way big leaguers are going to be able to play in the Olympics, but what does this do long term for, professional sports in the United States being able to translate those athletes to the Olympic stage?
Well, I don't think this sets any precedent for basketball. Basketball players are going to continue to play as professional players in the Olympics because it does happen in their off season. They don't have to worry about getting hurt because if they get hurt, unless it's a huge major injury, it's not going to affect their upcoming season. So basketball is going to keep being played by professional athletes.
Until they get tired of seeing the U.S. win, which, I mean, to be fair, happens.
And they make a rule,
a good chunk. Right. I think that's what it'll come down to is, I think that's what it'll come down to for basketball, yeah.
In my opinion, I think that what baseball should do, or could do anyway, I don't know that I should be the person who says that they should do this, but what I think that they could do in order to field the best team for the Olympics on the international stage would be to shut down the minor league system for 3 weeks in the middle of the summer. Minor league games don't matter. I mean, great. If you are a huge fan of the Fresno Grizzlies or the Flying Squirrels, great. I get it. You're a Durham Bulls fan. I get it. But the fact of the matter is that those games are nothing but showcases for guys trying to get to the big leagues. So what you should do is you shut that showcase down for 3 weeks in the summer every 4 years, and you field the team, and you allow other countries whose players play in the major league farm system to field their teams with people representing their respective countries who are ball players who could conceivably be playing Major League Baseball in the next 5 years. We're talking AAA prospects, strong AA prospects. You should be able to field an international quality team with those guys from the minor leagues and allow those guys to go play on the international stage. Guys who aren't WBC guys who aren't major league guys, who aren't playing under the big lights every day. And what you do in that case is twofold. One, you allow those guys to play meaningful games in a high stress environment, and you let the guys back at home who are not playing on those teams, you let them play exhibition games. And you let rookie ball guys come up into the regular minor leagues, and you let them play exhibition games for those 3 weeks that don't count, but they get to showcase a little bit. And in doing so, you field a strong team internationally, you continue to develop your farm guys here, and Major League Baseball is unaffected.
And I think that makes sense. I mean, there were guys on Puerto Rico, on Netherlands, other teams that were AA, AAA, some even high A guys. So I think that would make sense. I'm not sure how the exhibition thing will work. Luckily for these guys who may end up benefiting from the roster expansions in September, that the Olympics should be over at that point, so they will still be able to come back and be available for roster expansion. So something to think about, guys. Again, not that we're going to get it too deep into. There's plenty of time before the Olympics, for the next Summer Olympics, rather, to at least digest and discuss this. But it came across the wire today, and it kind of just got me thinking as to what that might mean. lastly, and I think this is the game we all were interested to see, was going to be the Cardinals and the Cubs, unless you hate those two teams and you couldn't care less. But, big picture as to what's happening in baseball today, the last thing really that I thought last night as that game ended was Mike Montgomery comes on the mound with a 3-3 ball game and promptly lost it. 3 runs given up in an inning and 2/3 by the Cardinals relief staff. By the Cubs relief staff, ended up being a 4-3 defeat. And it made me wonder, okay, is that why Joe Madden didn't use a ton of relievers during the postseason? And again, guys, I am not at all saying that the first game of the year is a blanket statement of how the season is going to go. I'm not at all that ignorant, even if you think I am. But what worries me is you lose Aroldis Chapman. Yes, you picked up Wade Davis, but we don't know what he's going to do yet. They're going to need solid relief help with that organization, and if they don't have it, I think there are serious concerns about the Cubs' ability to repeat if they aren't able to come together as a bullpen, which they may be able to do, but it is a concern after what I saw last night, especially now that David Ross is gone and that leadership is with Rizzo.
So, in your opinion, the Cubs should have gone out and picked up one of those 3 elite closers that were available in the offseason in order to shore up that closer side of the bullpen? Is that what you're saying?
I don't know if you necessarily need Melancon as I'm not saying Davis isn't going to do it. I'm just saying I don't want there to be an issue similar to what we had with your game yesterday in the Giants, where the bullpen ends up blowing it. Ty Block came in your game and pitched fantastic. Did his job. It's why you and I both think he deserves to be in the big leagues. But what we thought we were going to get.
But Derek Law blew it.
Yeah, and what we thought was going to be, a pretty easy Cubs win was not. And the way the Dodgers took this team to 7 last year, and the Indians pushed them to the brink of extra innings, it just has me sitting back, finally getting to watch the Cubs play real baseball against a team fielding everybody out there. And I know injuries and things happen, but it's like, man, they're going to have an Achilles heel. The thing now is, now that they've won, you're going to start really searching heavily for what that Achilles heel is, and it concerns me that the bullpen for the Cubs could be something that, do they have enough power to keep games from getting so close where they can afford a couple of runs, or are those close games going to start maybe turning up in the L column instead of the win column?
Well, I think that yesterday's performance by Montgomery is too soon to start getting worried about any of it. Obviously, they have the power to come back because their number 7 or 8 guy put a ball over the wall to tie the game at 3. Not exactly the response you expect from a number 8 guy. So I think that they're probably safe as far as offense goes. And in one game, and really at any time in the season, anything can happen. Is he going to give up a run every once in a while? Yes. And you can't expect that he's going to go through the season with a perfect ERA. Is it unfortunate that it happened in Game 1? Absolutely. But it's not time to get worried yet. Look at a guy like Mark Melancon, one of those closers that we're talking about that's an elite style closer who got paid pretty decent money to come in and try to round out the bullpen for the Giants. He comes in yesterday, and he gets into a situation. Comes in the 9th inning. He gets into a situation where he's up by a run, and has 2 outs and nobody on, and loses the game on a walk-off hit. They scored 2 runs on 2 outs in a rally against an elite closer. So I can't get worried that that's going to be the everyday performance of Mark Melancon, because nothing he showed me last year tells me that that's what it's going to be. And nothing that Montgomery showed in the playoffs leading up to the World Series shows me that this Montgomery that we saw last night is going to be the everyday Montgomery. Just like the everyday Tanaka is not going to be the guy who gives up 3 runs in the first inning. Yes, it was terrible that it happened on opening day, but it's one game and it's not enough for me to get worried about yet.
Okay, so this was just a version of overreaction Monday then, I suppose.
Right, exactly.
But no, I mean, grand scheme, yes, I certainly understand what you're saying, and do I think that Montgomery is going to struggle that poorly? No, but my concern goes more just, it's. I guess my concern ends up being more, just what will something like this come back to haunt them in a postseason series? And we saw that it almost did last year. And you don't have a guy like Aroldis Chapman who can throw, a rocket. So, again, I'm not saying that's what's going to happen here. I could be off. I'm sure most Cubs fans are hoping that I am. And I'm not at all jumping to conclusions saying that this is going to be how the season will go. My only worry is that, in that close game, kind of that Cubs magic that we got used to seeing, it didn't manifest itself. And granted, they started off on a huge tear last year and it tapered off, and then they kind of they found it again going into the playoffs. So that's baseball. It just, unfortunately, instead of it starting off their way this year, it started off in a negative way. We're going to see some adversity, and I'm sure we'll see them bounce back. But it did make me kind of sit there and think, what could that mean?
Yeah, and of course, anything like that happens is going to make you think that. You think that I wasn't thinking that when I was sitting there in Chase Field watching Mark Melancon lose a game with 2 outs?
Hell, I know you were. You were texting me the entire time.
Yeah. I was the first thing that I said to you was, that is not a good way for an elite closer who just got $65 million to play baseball to start off the season.
No.
And it's not.
But 31 blown last season, and you blow your first opportunity as a team to start off 2017. It should leave a bad taste in your mouth.
It's not what I want to see. It's not what anybody wants to see. I'm sure that Cubbies fans didn't want to see what happened last night. But beyond worries for the future, you know what I did get from last night's game?
What's that?
The National League Central is going to be a hell of a division to watch this year, because that was a fantastic game. And going back to something you said earlier, I would like to throw out that Martinez and was it Lester?
Yep.
Probably have the best pitched game by the starters of the opening day teams, and especially Martinez's performance for the Cardinals last night, where he went 8 1/3, and if he hadn't let that base runner get on, I think maybe he was going to finish that 8th inning, and they were going to go to 0 to finish the game out.
And we saw a couple of pitchers. Chris Archer, first game of the 2017 season, went over 100 pitches. So when we saw guys get much deeper than I anticipated guys getting starting off. But that's if guys are stretched out and they're able to go, you want to start off the season right, and that's a good thing.
Yeah. The overall feeling that I got from that game was that this is going to be a fun rivalry to watch.
It definitely will be. And there's not a ton of teams. The Brewers aren't going to be great, but, they should be able to, at least give a couple of teams a run. And again, we could see the Brewers play spoiler and the Pirates too. The Pirates, obviously are going to be looking for a postseason berth, but, who knows what they may end up, what they may end up doing, or who they may end up, eventually, getting knocked out of the playoffs. Guys, again, we're so excited that if you can't tell, that it's baseball season. We made it through an entire off-season of shows and managed apparently to keep most of you guys on board with us, which we are immensely grateful for. Some exciting stuff coming down the pike. I actually looks like I will be traveling out to see Chris in a couple of months, about 4 months. We are going to catch some games out there at Chase Field together, and early indications are that we actually will be getting a chance to.
Wait a minute. We're not just catching some games. We're going to watch Cubbies games. And not just Cubbies games, but late-season Cubbies games when these guys are in a groove. These are going to be fun games to watch. This is going to be a Cubs team who's in August form, who are playing hard, trying to keep that playoff, that repeat dream alive. These are going to be great games. And we get to catch an Astros game, which, in my opinion, with all the upgrades that they made in the offseason, is just as much fun.
It's going to be a ton of fun, and it's going to be hopefully the first time that we actually get a chance to broadcast the show on a location, which is going to actually be broadcasting out of left field at Chase Field. So we're excited about that. More to, we'll bring more to that as it comes, but might be getting one or two shows from out there at Chase Field. It's going to be an absolute blast. I'm looking forward to seeing you. I haven't seen you. I mean, and we obviously see each other doing the show, but we actually haven't seen each other face to face in coming up on 9 years, I think. So it's definitely been.
I think.
Yeah, it's been a minute. Yeah, it was July of 2008, sometime in there when you PCS. So it's going to be a lot of fun, guys. Again, thanks for sticking with us. Enjoy opening week. I am sorry that the government has not made opening day a holiday. I am pushing for it. We can start a petition. It should be. Just like Super Bowl should be on Saturday, so you don't go, you're not work hungover on a Monday, and get rid of daylight savings time. Those are my three things that I think we should do.
Exactly. I agree completely. And of all those three things, I live in a state that doesn't participate in daylight savings time, so I don't give a damn about that one. And of the other two remaining things, baseball's opening day being a national holiday is number one, because I think that if your team plays on a Monday, then you shouldn't be penalized for skipping work and going to that game, which we all know you're going to do.
There you go. And, hey, if you're lucky, maybe, just maybe, you get to sit over in the left field seats, and in a couple months you might be catching Chris and I out of left field broadcasting the show. Guys, again, enjoy opening week. We look forward to talking with you next week at OO Left Field on Twitter, Out of Left Field, hosted by Chris and Graham on Facebook, the Out of Left Field baseball community. For Chris Ferry, Graham McGowan, guys, have a great rest of your week. If you're a Tar Heels fan, if you're a Bulldog fan of Gonzaga, good luck in the national championship game tonight. It's going to kind of be too late to hear good luck because it's already going to happen by the time you hear the show. But, hey, hope your team pulls through. Dad, go Tar Heels. Chris, I will catch you next week, brother, Out of Left Field on the Grueling Truth Network.